Now that we've spent some time with row vectors, we're going to talk about matrices. So matrices have two dimensions. We talked about how vectors have one dimension. Matrices have two dimensions. So you could kind of think of a matrix almost like a bunch of row vectors just kind of stacked on top of each other. So the first thing we'll do is we'll look at how we might create a matrix. So when we created a row vector, we did something like this, right? We just put values separated by spaces, or we said they could also be separated by commas. If we want to make a matrix, we can do something similar. We can have values separated by spaces or commas, then a semicolon followed by more values, then another semicolon followed by more values, and so on. And so what this does is that the semicolons are at the row breaks. So we list the values for each row, and then we have a semicolon which indicates a row break, and then we have the values for the next row, and so on and so forth. One thing to be careful about when you use this notation is that the rows need to be of equal length. You can't have rows that are different lengths. MATLAB won't fill that in for you. There are a couple of ways that you can make special functions. So for example, there's a function called zeros that will make you a matrix of all zeros. Similarly, there's a function called ones that will make you a matrix of all ones. For both zeros and ones, you pass in a single argument to the function, right? This is a function call, and the argument tells you the dimension that will be used for the matrix. So if you pass in 5, then what you get back is a 5 by 5 matrix of zeros, meaning that it has 5 rows and 5 columns. Remember, we always specify the rows first and then the columns when we're talking about the size of a matrix. If you pass in 3 as argument to the ones function, you get back a matrix of ones that has 3 rows and 3 columns, so its size is 3 by 3. Another function that will help us create matrices of numbers is randi. And so let's just take a look at the help page for the randi function. You'll see that what this function does is it fills a matrix with pseudo-random integers. We'll talk in class a little bit about why we say pseudo-random instead of random when we talk about programming. But here's how we call the function. We pass in a maximum integer, right? And then another value n, and what we get back is an n by n matrix, so the n is giving us the dimension of the matrix. And this I max is telling us what range we'll use to select our random number between 1 and whatever we specify as the maximum. So let's see what that would look like. We might come down and say, make me a matrix using randi of random numbers between 1 and 10, and I want my matrix to be 4 by 4. So this is where I get back again. The first number tells me the range of the random numbers that I'll generate between 1 and 10. And the second argument tells me the dimension of my matrix. So this is a 4 by 4 matrix. So here are some basic ways that we'll create matrices, two-dimensional matrices. We can list the values, separating the rows by semicolons. We can create matrices of zeros and ones using special functions, and we can fill a matrix with random numbers using the randi function.